Hello, welcome to Kingdom of Yah. I'm going to just be jumping around on a few things. I really need to get to Proverbs here. I will probably be adding back a lot of these verses because anywhere there's not a story, at least like here where I started separating this, I just need to put the verses back. But also beyond that, I may end up turning the Proverbs into something like Psalms as well, where it's all comparison of the Masoretic, Septuagint, and uh, Aramaic, prosciutto. Um, I don't know how different it is in the Septuagint, but the Psalms can be very different, a little too often. So either in just the wording and how easy it is to understand it, or sometimes just say something completely different, or at least have very different details, if anything. So I will have to do some comparison here. Um, no pun intended, seeing as that's literally what a proverb is a comparison. So you can see the Hebrew and Greek word here. So the Greek is usually translated into parable. It's the same thing. It's comparing two different things. It's making an analogy, right? So this is why whenever, like, let's go back to 14 here. You will see one thing stated, but this other thing. One thing, but this other thing. Almost every one of these has a but or some sort of comma or semicolon separating the two ideas, right? With the parables of like Jesus, it's going to be, comparing the house built on the rock versus the sand, or the seed in on the path, or the good soil, or in the thorns, or something like this, right? Or comparing what you would do in this situation compared to what you would do in in a hypothetical situation versus a real situation, something like this, where the lost coin, the lost sheep, the prodigal son is another comparison of the two different sons. The sheep, one versus the 99. The lost coin is um, comparing, like, wouldn't you go find this coin, and wouldn't you celebrate, versus you're not celebrating the money you already have, you're celebrating the money you have again that you didn't have. So and I'm starting to notice, and this is something I'm going to do here soon, is wherever I had this, I've got a new one coming up here where I want to do, whoops, that looks horrible. And then I can go back, and then there we go. um, I don't know, should I cut off this side over here? I usually bring this up to 125. There we go. So I need to add a title up here. So I want to add this because there's this idea I want to explore and really be able to show people, to hopefully inspire some hope and understanding even, and show people more grace with each other, is understanding that wisdom is not just for the Christians. It's not just for the Torah observant or the godly or the whatever, or what have you, right? Technically, yes, it's for the righteous, but that doesn't include or exclusively dictate that it only goes to those who are disciplined in some specific faith or something like this, or have some specific belief, right? Which is kind of what's heavily implied, it seems, where people kind of get, up on their high horse sort of deal when it comes to their understandings, right? They get very proud of this, which there is no pride in wisdom. And I will probably have to put wisdom. I had did this in another one, which I might just do this here, where I had changed wisdom to being, because it's usually, personified as a her. So just for the sake of being able to find this word easily, I'm going to use this.
Hello. Well, I don't know how many brain cells I'm going to have. I just spent the last 4 hours on the phone with my sister. Apparently, she was needing somebody to vent to. So, what you doing? Breaking down Proverbs here? Yeah. Look, right. Look in the Book of Wisdom. When I was sitting in a Bible study reference group or Bible study group, they were comparing the Book of Wisdom to Proverbs, and there was a lot of things in the Book of Wisdom that was almost like word for word of that. Is it older than, excuse me, Song of Solomon, or is it like new? Because the 12 patriarchs also come to mind now that we've started looking into some of those. Well, I think it gets traced back to almost the Tower of Babel. Right, yeah. 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 Oh yeah. Yeah. My sister and I were just talking about that earlier today. Like, she married a guy that he considers himself a Christian, like a hardcore kind of Christian. But once he started getting around her, I don't know if he was like this before her, but she lives a very wild life. She always has ever since my brother-in-law died. I mean, she was pretty reckless beforehand, but it got really bad once he died because she nearly died in a car wreck. And he was coming out of occultism, searching for the Father. Now, whether or not he ever accepted him, I don't know for sure. I probably won't know, but I did the best that I could to try to be that kind of a witness to him, even though I was walking kind of like a blind faith. I wasn't toward observant yet. And so she was saying that when she got together with this new husband of hers, that he said one of the reasons why he married her was because she was the most Christian woman he had ever met. And I had to really stop and think about that phrase because I was like, boy, she's living a life of debauchery and
Right.
everything that, the spirits of the flesh that we're not supposed to be doing. But then I thought, she's got a certain standard of morals that she lives by that are very based in what we would consider Christianity, you know.
Right.
And so even though she's living a life of debauchery, there are things that she just adamantly refuses to cross those certain lines. And so we were talking about that, it's not that who are we to judge, but it's, the definitions of what some people call Christians and others don't. How they look at that. And I think it's sad to see with these body of believers, especially in the Torah communities, are spending so much time getting hung up on knowledge or who's walking the path a certain way, this kind of stuff. It's really getting under my skin. And I've been trying to pray to the Father to help me to plant seeds. I know that it's going to take us planting seeds and then hoping the good fruits will be coming about. But in the same sense, it's like, at what point do you just say, okay, I can't do this in this group anymore because of the fact that you guys are so hung up on, a certain indoctrination that just goes against scripture. It's
Right.
right there. The proof is in the pudding. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. By no means. Last night I was in a group and I drove one guy nuts because I kept changing the subject. And I'm like, dude, if you'd know me, you'd know that I have squirrel moments. When something hits my brain cell, it comes right out of my mouth. And you got to take notes when you're with me because I'm all over the map. But my husband's like, hey, just sit back and listen and just chill for a minute. And so that's what I did, was try to sit back and chill for a minute, because this is one of those guys that he comes into the group to argue for the sake of arguing. Because what he's doing is he will go to his church on Sunday and he will take and present all these things to his church body that he's learning in the Torah community, and then he comes back and wants to negotiate with us. And in my daughter's words, you don't negotiate with terrorists kind of things. But it was just, I don't know, it was a struggle for me last night. And I learned a lot. I really enjoyed the conversations. But I've noticed that it's really taxing my patience and how to love one another, which is why I keep referencing back to James here lately, because my tongue is getting the best of me.
Right.
And then of course, James goes right back into Proverbs and learning about the wisdom. Have you? I think I've asked you this before. If you've ever read any of Brian Gottowal's books on the Trails of the Nephilim, or not Trails, but Chronicles of the Nephilim.
Hmm.
He has one that he wrote. It's like a fictitious story, but it's almost biblically based in a way. He has a whole synopsis on it, but he actually goes in and has a book about the Chinese culture and how this one um, emperor wanted to follow the ways of the Bible, do the biblical feasts like they had been doing, and another person came in and like basically took over. I don't know how all that history works, but anyways, this other guy came in, took over, and then he's the one that led them down the path of kind of where they're at now with the whole idol worshiping of the things that they worship. But according to Brian, back in the day, these guys all worshipped the Father, and did the biblical feasts. So I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, this is something I still need to be able to study more, especially with the Chinese, because apparently they, until like the early 1900s, were still doing, as a country, for the most part, we're still a quote unquote Christian nation, basically, or more so like they were still doing sacrifices and everything. Like the last one was like in 1911 or 15 or something like that. And their temple is called the Temple of Heaven, and it's around of all things. It's a round temple, and it's the only one that doesn't have any idols in it.
Oh wow.
Um, Gates of Heaven, maybe Gates of Heaven. I'll have to see. Let's see. Let's
Gates of
just
Heaven
look at
almost
it.
sounds familiar. Yeah. Well, isn't a lot of their symbolism, their type of language, very similar to the Hebrew? Yeah. Yeah, and some of that does kind of look a little bit like the Hebrew letters. I had read somewhere where somebody said Japan was a little bit closer than China, but I think they're all pretty similar in nature myself. But I'm not that knowledgeable in any of this stuff. Like I said, I just pick up patterns and that kind of thing. Yeah. Well, I have one of these timeline things that talk about one of Noah's son, the one that starts with a Joseph, or I can never pronounce his name. Yeah, that guy. And so they believe that most of the Asian culture came from that bloodline. Yeah, I have no idea how they came up with this. Yeah, I noticed here lately trying to do research on here is like getting next to difficult. You can't find anything anymore. And if you find something good, you need to print it off because it'll be gone tomorrow. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, because there's a lot of history there that's being lost because of it. Sounds almost like a spring feast. Right, yeah. Yeah, I just seen a YouTube video where there was some people. They were in Germany, but they're of the Asian descent, and I think they were Vietnamese or something like that, and they were doing their New Year, and I found that quite interesting. You know, the timeline of their New Year. Yeah. Right. It almost sounds as if it's like one of the Native American names for Yahweh too, in a way. I might be stretching there, but it just kind of has that ring to it, like it could be. Fish hooks. Must have something to do with the bone shards. That's kind of cool. That's pretty neat. Well, yeah, and add it to your you know what I'm talking about. Gosh, my brain is like fried. Yeah. Oh wow, that'd be cool. Hey, what prophet had the vision of the valley of the dry bones? Ezekiel. Dang, I said Elijah, but I knew it was Ezekiel. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, World of Warcraft was a big time game back in the day. Yeah, that's actually really neat. I've actually seen something very similar to this, and it was on like a Wish. I think it was like a Wish site or a almost like Temu site. Yeah, yeah, and I was just thinking too, like if you printed them out for like the pen pal situation, you could like do Psalms or not. Yeah, you could do Psalms or you could do Proverbs and like create your own little um, cunograph thing like that.
Right. Yeah,
That'd
like
be really neat.
here's a coin. So I'll try to put these in the documents and what have you whenever I can, the best I can find. So this is a coin that's mentioned because it'll give a specific Greek word for a specific coin, whereas the English will probably have silver coin, or sometimes it'll say penny or something like this, and have an English interpretation of the idea, which the word penny actually did work correctly because it was like the smallest coin, and it was
Yeah,
also copper, but nothing has changed in 2,000 years.
right.
I mean, literally, I look at this. This looks like an American coin, just about, right? It's
Yeah,
got the
yeah, it
eagle and it's
does.
got the head. Yeah, it's the same thing. So this is apparently from Tyre. I didn't know this, and this was considered the shekel of Tyre. So I thought that was kind of cool. So it had a couple different names for it. But I don't know if I have more in here. I think I do. There's another one. There's that penny, the leptos, or
Huh,
the
that's
mite.
pretty
It might
neat.
says. I think King James says mite. Um, so just for historical sake, there's another one. Um, that's actually just I think for the. Oh no, that's the penny one. Well then, what is this one? Oh, that's the penny. I'm confused. Oh, this is a specific measurement. It's a 16th of a denarius. Probably like I don't know, let's say a dime or a nickel kind of thing then. But it's also copper. But if I can get a clear enough image or something like that, even if I kind of roughed it out and just did whatever I could, just to have a speaking point whenever you're talking about something historically or something, you're like, oh look, here it is, right? Um,
Yeah, that's kind of
because
like what L.A. Marzulli did with those skulls.
mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
Nephilim skulls.
yeah, exactly. And if I can get a good scan of that too, I might do that as well, just to again be able to study it. If I more so, I would want one that's like a 3D scan. That way you can actually see the holes in the skull to know and study where they are. Otherwise, it would be kind of useless. But unless you
You
just
do
want a
know
long
that
skull.
Jeremiah has Rob's replicated skulls.
Does he really?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious on how they had done those because they look flawless.
Yeah, reach out to Jeremiah and see, because if I remember right, they were sitting on the bookshelf right behind him in some of his videos.
Right.
Because I know Rob used to have at least one of them.
On.
Hey, I have a question. So this Michael guy or whatever his name is, that was posting this thing about the Colburn Bible, is
Mm-hmm.
that the same Bible as what you and I were talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't got into it. Yeah, it's kind of funny. He's like, "Yeah, did you read the creation account?" And that's the only one I've read and copied over and barely have touched. So the Book of Creation, but there are so many other ones, wisdom, so and so forth. So I really should just copy these things over, especially the wisdom one here, and test it out and see what it's all about. I'm gonna have to add a nothing comment here.
There was a gal, I'm trying to look for her name here. She actually sent me a link. Interesting, I don't see it now. Because you sent me one and then she came back through and sent one. Gosh, now I don't see it at all on here. I wonder if it got removed.
There's wisdom a lot. See what it says about wisdom real quick. Truth and wisdom can be no one's monopoly. The wisdom of your it's probably getting cut off. That's less sort of cut off. Let's see if I can zoom that out. There we go. With the wisdom of your generation, tell us which of these things mentioned would really benefit you or even prove less bad than good. Do you still remain unaware of your true nature and needs? I have no idea what it's talking about, but interesting. Wisdom and truth. Wisdom being eternal. Who knows or who would have known God's wisdom and power? Okay, just scanning through here. Unbound wisdom fills his heart, as it is written in the wisdom of men. That's a weird phrase.
Yeah, that's why he just kind of threw me off when he was talking about the history of this and stuff. And I'm like, something just doesn't set right in my spirit about it.
Yeah, I never heard that one. So I mean, at least the wiki page or whatever about it. That's all I know really about it is that it was by tradition, without any evidence that I've seen so far. But again, a lot of these things aren't very studied. Um, is that it was handed down from the Egyptians from written sometime after the Exodus, like right after the Exodus for some reason. And I
Yeah.
could see that as possible somehow, but then it was somehow handed to, well, how did it go? It somehow ended up in the Celts' hands at some point, and that's what we have today, sort of, except we don't have any Celtic um, text either. We only have the translation in English. So, as far as I've heard, like we only have like a translation of a translation that's left over. Um, there might be another translation between that too. So I don't know how it got from Egyptian and then held on until the Coptics, I guess, and the first century AD or something like that, or somewhere around first, second, third, or whatever, and then it was moved on to maybe that's where he was getting this idea of Joseph of Arimathea. Maybe picked it up from Egypt, I don't know, and then took it to England.
Well, look at the slavery. Um, when the there was a huge push for slavery, and they were picking up certain people, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed culture of people that were from the north. I always think of them as being Celtic in nature, but I could be wrong. But anyways, when you're looking into the slavery of things, of the Egyptians uh, taking these people into slaves, Turkey especially. There's a lot of areas of Turkey where people, they'd go to some of these different foreign countries. They would kidnap people and put them into the slave trade thing.
Right.
And so the only thing I could think of on that line of thought would be maybe these stories are coming from those people in slavery, and then it's just being absorbed into the cultures that they are now stuck in, if that makes sense.
Right. Yes. It's hard to say. And like I was saying before, whether this was ever different or more legitimate or something at some point, it's hard to say. So you can kind of only judge it by the knowledge and wisdom that it puts out, um, of the translation sort of thing. And it's the same way I kind of look at scripture as well. Is we don't really know for sure what has been done to this or not. So what can we learn from it and practice from it that is something that we can experience as being true, kind of thing. Um, so, and this
Yeah, because
is
that was something my husband kept bringing up was we have, what was it, 35,000 deviations of religion out there with their own interpretations of the Bible. And of
it's,
course, he doesn't win any attaboys whenever he starts going off down that little path,
let's see. I saw a slightly
especially in the King
interesting
James.
spot here. I don't know what chapter I'm in. This must be something about creation. It just randomly said, I don't know what's with all these quotations. Um, Great mountains to the east, to the west, and north. Okay, then came the day when all things became still and apprehensive, for God caused a sign to appear in the heavens so that men would know the earth would be afflicted, and the sign was a strange star. The star grew and waxed. That's weird. Okay, with to a great brightness. Um, Sorry, I was distracted by the wax. I don't think that has anything to do with like the moon or anything. Um, I had to learn what waxed and wane meant, which is a old English or Norse term or something like that, meaning to grow or shrink.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Um, but awesome to behold, it put forth horns and sang, being unlike any other ever seen. So men seeing it said amongst themselves, surely this is God appearing in the heavens above us. The star was not God, though it was directed by his design, but the people had not the wisdom to understand. Yeah. Interesting. Then God manifested himself in the heavens. His voice was the roll of thunders, and he was clothed with smoke and fire. Then he carried lightnings in his hands, and his breath falling upon the earth brought forth brimstone and embers. His eyes was a black void, and his mouth an abyss containing the winds of destruction. He encircled the whole of the heavens, bearing upon his back a black robe adorned with stars. Yeah, this seems like an acid trip to me.
Oh,
Not that I've been
absolutely.
through one. But this is the book of
No,
creation still, I think.
and that's what I was trying to tell that guy. I said it came across as more paganish in nature than aligned with scripture.
or
That's why
just
I had a hard time believing or swallowing what he was saying about how it's from that Joseph guy that,
right.
you know, owned the
Yeah,
tomb,
I
that
don't know
thing.
how much of that creation story is meant to be taken literal or what. It seems very, very, very poetic and not very instructive so much, but
Well, here's a
I
question.
don't know.
How much does it align with the Emerald tablets?
Um, I don't know on that again.
I don't either, but it keeps being shoved in my face.
Yeah, I've seen too many things about it being, I don't know. Let's just see.
Definitely some forbidden knowledge there. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of wondering if this Colburn Bible isn't something that's kind of similar in nature. Of course, I haven't really read it, so I can't say anything. But why? That's the big question. Yeah, yeah, under the influence of some, you know, sacred being. At the end of that page that you have pulled up is actually the story of Noah. It said it was built on the lake of Namos, close by the river of Gold, where it divides. All the household of Hanok was there, and the household of his brother, who directed the men at task. Can't think of what it. Or, I mean, I can't see what the guy's name was.
I don't know where you were.
I'm not too sure. But it was talking about how they were building a boat, and it was so many. It had the measurements in there. It was
Does it say
towards the
boat?
bottom of a page. Yeah, I think it said boat. Could have said ship, but
Yeah, it's not it. No, it's not it.
Hanok was the name. Like it was like Noah, but with an HO something.
Okay, with a K. Okay. Hanok. Hanok. There's Enoch, yeah. Then the king
Yeah.
sent for
Okay.
Enoch, son of however you say that artist. There's all kinds of different weird names.
Yeah. The second paragraph down is where it was.
I will go down to the sea and would therefore build a great ship that I may take people upon it with me. Okay. Narcissus, go down the sea, build a ship there. Then what's about a ship? Be built against the mountains, and the sea will come up to me. Okay, that's definitely the flood. The people mocked him, calling him commander of the sea. That sounds plausible, but they did not hinder him gaining or sea gaining in his undertaking. Therefore, the great ship was laid down under the leadership of, assuming Enoch, son of whatever, king of whatever, and it was built on the lake of Namos, um, close to the river of gold, where it divides. That's one of the four rivers. All the households of Enoch were there, his brothers. Yeah, there's some strange names here. Captain of the ships. Overseas craftsmen with women and children carried men. Length was 300 cubits, so that's the same. Breadth 50. That's the same. So now we're definitely talking about Noah's Ark here. Oh, and now it even talks about a separation of the animals. This makes sense to me. So there's three decks, right? Three levels.
Yeah. Yep. And it was
It says
divided
the
into 6 parts.
beast for beast and cattle on the lower part. The middle is for the birds, for plants of every kind, and beast. Uppermost was for the people. Okay, so animals below, people above. Each story was divided in half so that there were 6 floors below and one above. Um, that's interesting about the partitions and stuff. It were cisterns for water, storehouse for food. It was built with a scara food, or scara food, wood, I don't know what I'm saying, which water cannot rot or worms enter, so that makes sense. It was pitched within and without, so same thing. Cisterns were lined, planks were edged, and the joints were made fast with uh, hair and oil. Great stones were hung from ropes of plated leather, and the ship. So it's got drag drag stones. That's interesting that it says this. Uh, Now I'm curious if Ron Wyatt knew about that at all. So, well, drag stones, drag anchors, not anchor stones. drug stones. Is that the word?
I can't remember the the word of the stones, but yes, I think he did know about it because they were talking about it. Hmm. Right. Yeah. Arcadia would. Hmm. Yeah.
See this again. So this is why I have to copy this stuff over, but I'll do that soon enough. Something
Oh
is
yeah,
wrong
I've
with like
already
some of
read.
these. What's
I've already read through the page.
yeah, I assume so. Where was I? Let's see.
You were in the middle of that paragraph where it says the lowermost was for the beast, the cattle's the provider, later was sand, and then each story was screened. Okay, so we were looking at the cisterns. It was pitched without within, no
Yeah,
poles, no openings, grains.
many carried
Yeah, they
on.
also took all kinds of beasts in the field, wild beasts, birds, fowls, things that crawled, gold, silver, metals, and stones. Now that's kind of interesting. They would lay up gold, silver, metals, and stones.
Yeah, and even had slaughtered meat already. So
Yeah,
that I find curious. So did I show you that experiment that I did with like the hyperbaric thing with like the strawberries?
yeah, yeah. You
I
showed
need
us
to do
that.
that. I need to do that with meat, but ideally like freshly slaughtered kind of meat, and see how long it takes to actually rot out. Because theoretically, he may have not even had to salt it or store it in any way. He could have just held on to it.
Oh yeah, never thought about that.
So if it didn't rot in the same way, because I'm thinking this is why he could have even had fresh fruit for a very long time. Um,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. But it says which was smoked by fire, so this is cooked. Now you can leave out meat for a long. If it's freshly slaughtered meat, you can actually leave it out for a very long time, especially if you salt it like on the outside, just like or cake it in something. You can have a dry aged kind of meat, and you can actually
Hmm. Yep.
keep that meat for like a year or whatever too without smoking it or. But it's funny that he says smoked it, right?
Well, they call
So
that
is this like
salt packing also. But when you smoke it
right?
by fire, that's like a type of jerky.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There's jerky, right? So they
Hmm.
got grain and
Yeah.
jerky, so they're that's pretty funny.
But when you look at the Native Americans, that was their main diets. They
Yeah,
would gather roots and, plants and stuff like that. But their main diet was like grains and meat.
right.
And it was usually pemmican and jerky.
Yeah, I mean, you could just like hang a meat over a fire and just smoke it that way. It didn't have to be like in some fancy smoker and all this, right? Also, yeah, gold, silver, metal, stones. The people of the plains came up and camped around to see this wonder. That's funny. Even the sons of whoever were among them daily mocked the builders of this great ship. So this is something I was asking. Like I've always even grown up with this idea that the people mocked Noah, but it doesn't say that anywhere,
I think
and
it
it doesn't
actually
say that like they
says
were
it.
like banging on him, banging on the outside and trying to get in and all that. But it doesn't say like what they were anything like that. But in Jasher, it does. And I thought that
Yeah, I
was
was going to
weird.
say, in one of the extra biblical texts, I do
Yeah,
remember reading that they were talking about that.
yeah. So
Because
it
when
does
you look at
explicitly
some of
say that in
the,
Jasher.
yeah, if you look at the old King James, where they have the pictures of certain Bible stories in them, that is one of the things
Right.
that some of the old ancient King James Bibles would show is people beating on the sides of the ship to get in.
And you think that's exactly what would happen, right? I mean, if the water slowly came about, at least is like, oh man, this is happening. Is exactly what you've been talking about. Let us in. Nope, too late.
Yep.
Um, which is exactly I just realized too exactly what's going to happen on Day of the Lord and stuff like this, or on Judgment Day is whenever they're resurrected into their old body or whatever, and they're begging, and it's like, and it even says that you can't make a petition anymore for people who have already died.
Right.
Like that door has been sealed. Now it's judgment time. Right.
Right.
Gates closed. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, and yeah, it makes sense. So I don't know. So this is where I would give, a text like this credit, whether it is again just a compilation of or a novel version of some sort of tradition passed down. Because even that's I think that same understanding is in the Talmud that is in Jasher. I'll have to find it. I have to cross reference this stuff at some point, but not everything in Jasher, all these details are in the Talmud that I've seen. Surprising
I
amount is
wonder,
not.
look at the Targums. I wonder if it's in the because it's been forever since I read the Targums. It's very possible it could have been in the Targum too.
Forget which one you're saying. This one or that one?
The
Let me see.
Oki.
That one?
That's the only way I can remember it is going with the Oki.
Yeah.
It's
Onkelos?
terrible, but
Onkelos? Yeah. I hear you. Where would that be? Nope. Didn't jump far enough. 11, 12, somewhere around here? Where am I at? What are these names?
those are Abraham.
Oh, jeez. 9.
There we go. Noah.
Noah. Just trying to guess here. Let's see. Wait. Okay. wait, I don't know if you can even read this. Sorry. Whoops. Whoop. I don't know. Wait. And from. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's actually right. Okay.
It's a little big on
uh,
my end, but that's okay.
from. I can always.
There, right there. Right? Yep, that works. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like big on the screen because of how I have it, but like tiny on my giant screen here. From the
Yeah, yeah.
hands. So
I
is this
told
like
my
the inserted
husband.
commentary? Oops.
I think so. I told my husband I need like dual monitors whenever they build my computer, because I'm supposed to get a new computer here. That way I could do this research at the same time I'm watching your screen too.
Right. Yeah,
Otherwise, I just get lost in.
I really need to upgrade. I have some old Acer monitor here that's like a 28 inch or something, and then I have this old, I don't know, 19 inch square Dell monitor
One of the
from
old
15, 20 years
90s.
ago, something like that. Yeah, I mean just about. It's old, but it's got a really nice speaker underneath it, and that's why I like it. And that's what I use for my computer speaker. And I just got used to the square format, and I use it for something different over here, like all my side stuff. But I'd prefer two or three of the same size monitors. But I don't know. Really, I would like one uh, portrait instead of landscape, so I can do my coding and stuff with a tall screen. But let's see. Let's find this
I just
spot.
posted a meme for you in your edit chat. I came across that one this morning. It was
Oh yeah, I
hilarious.
had
I
seen
had to share it.
that.
That's how I feel today, trying to get ready for this Bible
Yeah,
study.
you can go watch. I've set my rainbow. Whoops, stop clicking stuff.
I'm actually surprised that he hasn't gone into more details here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Myself, my word. Living creature, rainbow, clouds between myself. Covenant. Where do we get before? Got this.
Yeah, he skipped
Um,
clean over the details of that.
Three sons and Noah. Yeah, I mean, do I gotta go to the instructions of the ark here? This must be after that, right? Okay, so let's go to.
Yeah, there's no instructions of the ark.
Okay, so this is further back. Come into the ark. Okay, before the ark is made. Uh, time. It's okay. 350, 30. What is this?
Yeah, so that's all about
Almost.
the same.
Whoops. Make a skylight. Interesting wording. Make a lower deck, a second and third deck. Um, so it's calling it first, second, third.
Hmm.
That's interesting how it's worded that way. It's like you're standing on the top deck, and it's like, oh yeah, make a second and third deck, like implying that the top is for people. I don't know. It would make sense, but behold, I am
Yeah.
bringing flood waters, destroy the earth, sash my covenant with you. Yeah, there's not really a lot of extra anything here.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I was thinking it might have been in here, but
Yeah,
like I
this
said, it's
this
been a
is
while since I read it.
how that's summarized, right? Take the foods that are eaten and gather it for yourself. It will be food for you. Okay, pack some food. Um, So it doesn't word it in the same detail. Uh, um, yeah, it doesn't say anything more than that. Chapter was that? 6.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll say anything more either.
This actually uses the phrase Holy Spirit. That's interesting. This is the Jonathan Targum, not to be confused with the pseudo Jonathan Targum or the Jerusalem Targum. This says wood of cedars.
Yeah, the other one said cedars too.
Did it?
But
Okay,
instead of
that's
using the
probably what I
word
was looking for.
cells, yeah, instead of using the word cells, it used that A word instead.
Yeah.
But the measurements seemed all, well, this one's the measurements not, but the other measurement seems to line up.
Wait, I don't remember this. What is this? Go to the
Philstone
Pishon.
sounds like the one of the great, not lakes, but the rivers.
Yeah, but Genesis. I'm just gonna have to pull it up over here.
Okay, I'll be right back while you're looking that up. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I'm not familiar with the Samaritan one. I've read the Onki one and I've read the Jonathan one.
Sorry. 13, 14, 16.
That's interesting. They missed 15 altogether.
So there's no dimensions, or did they combine it? They combined it right here. Make you an arc of cedars. So this is 850. 150. What? 30 and 6 in its breadth, and 10 cubits in the midst. I don't know what this is measuring. Lay up in the provisions, 5 repositories on the right and 5 on the left. I have no idea what it's talking about. And then it comes out of left field with go to the river and get precious stones and fix it to the ark to illuminate you.
Right?
This sounds like some Talmud stuff for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't even line up with the Colburn Bible one.
yeah, I know. I mean, because they're also the ones that think that the Urim and the Thummim are stones that glow, right? Or that the breastplate would glow. Like this is in the Talmud. Like I have it in that. Well, the hey, let's actually see what this says. The Chumash, right?
Oh,
This
yeah.
thing. So let's see what this says because this is Genesis and stuff. Does it start at the back? Yes, it does. So I got to read backwards here. Genesis. How do I read this thing? Genesis. What chapter am I in? I see Genesis. I see verses. Is that chapter 12? That's 12. What did I say? 6? 6. 6. Um, 14. Okay, here we go. So they have just the scripture on top. So we're going to look at 15. So 14, they have a comment. Noah built the ark himself. Arba now? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Medically, he was told what? Symbol. Yeah, make an ark to symbolize your own behavior. Huh?
That sounds
you
new agey.
you remained aloof from your compatriots instead of chasing them and trying to save them by improving their conduct. So you didn't try to save them? Now you will isolate yourself, which is kind of their mentality too, right? It's like, oh, we're saved and we don't care if you are, right? It's
Oh yeah,
okay. So I'm
I
thinking that's
actually
that
came.
mentality.
My husband names it self righteousness because I
But
just came across a lady that was like that. That she just felt like her and her family were worthy enough to go to heaven and nobody else can because they didn't walk the same path as she did.
right. Now you will isolate yourself in the ark with beasts and animals. Oh, I think this commentary is naming the person who's commenting. It's Shish Al Shish. I don't know. Noah's failure to try and influence his generation is why the flood is called waters of Noah in Isaiah 54. Okay.
Huh.
Implying that he was responsible for the flood. Zohar. Is that Zohar is flood? Um, and then a commentary on 15, even according to the smallest estimate of, okay, they're just trying to interpret the cubits. Um, and saying that it had 100, or from the smallest measurement, which is the 18-inch cubit, is 101 square feet. So interesting. Okay, that's their only comment on that. 16, a window. Some say a skylight. Okay, so that's what the Babylonian one said, skylight. According to most commenters, it was the window Noah opened after the flood. Some say it was a precious stone. Here we go. Some say that it was a precious stone that refracted the outside light to illuminate. Okay, now that makes more sense. So, glass windows or what have you.
Oh, right.
Okay, so it's not something
Yeah,
that's glowing. This is something that is made to kind of sparkle on the inside, so they have some light in the daytime.
right.
I could
So
see
yeah,
that.
windows would make sense.
Yeah, so something that would be sealed that's more on the side, so that each deck might have some light in it, just enough to be able to kind of make your way around, even with a lamp or something. Um,
Yeah.
because there's a big difference between no light and very little light.
Oh, definitely.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Skylights. Yeah.
man, I experienced that one time going to a cave in South Dakota, and you think you know what dark is, and then suddenly, yeah, you go deep in this cave and you turn off the lights, and it is horribly disorienting. And I
And
mean, it
scary.
gave
Yeah.
me extreme anxiety, like real fast. And then they showed that you smack rose quartz together, and your eyes, after adjusting for just a few seconds, will be able to see this light that's emitted from striking these stones together. And they said that, like, these guys who would go through these caves and stuff would carry these stones with them so that if they did get stuck in the cave, they wouldn't go blind, because being in there for like 3 days, you can actually just go blind. Your eyes
Mm-hmm.
are so absolutely unused that they think that your mind thinks that you're blind, and then you go blind. So they would strike these things just to get your eyes to function in some sort of way. And it was not enough to like light the room at all. You can barely see a dim glow from the stone. Um, Maybe enough to tell like where a wall was, but you pretty much have to be close enough to touch it anyways. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too. But
Yeah,
yeah,
my
so I mean,
husband
any
thinks
little
it's
light would
weird.
help.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My husband thinks it's weird because I will walk through the house with like none of the lights on because we have enough windows in the house that, outside light pours in and I can see just fine going through there, unless it's really dark furniture and then I might hit one. But for the most part, I do a lot of things, like what he would consider in the dark. And I don't know why. I've just always been that way. But then he cannot see in the dark the same way that I can. And I started thinking, about how being colorblind, how that affects people. And that is one of the things that I've noticed that colorblind people are associated with. They cannot see in the dark. They can see through camouflage, but they cannot see in the dark as well as we can because everything just kind of blends together. But I know what you're talking about with some of the caves and stuff. I grew up in Wyoming. It's, out in the dark is pretty darn creepy.
Ularat? I don't know what that is. I'm trying to read the Hebrew here, but it says so and so, whatever rabbis I assume, render this word as the history, so that the primary subject of the chapter is not his family, but his life story as it relates to the flood and its aftermath. Oh, okay. Um, and then another commentary on another word in his generations. There is different interpretations of the phrase his generations. They emphasize his. Some sages or wise men maintain that it is his praise. It is in his praise. Noah was righteous even in his corrupt generation. How much more righteous would he have been had he lived in a truly righteous generation, if he had the companionship and inspiration of Abraham? Okay. According to others, however, it is critical of him only in his generation. By comparison with his extremely wicked contemporaries, did Noah stand out as a righteous man, but he lived so righteous in his generations. I guess this is talking about. Um,
Okay.
like he was righteous in his generation. So they're trying to figure out, like, because it is kind of a weird phrase, right? So they're trying to figure out, like, okay, what does that imply? What does that mean? Um, what aspect are we supposed to be looking at? So it is interesting, their commentary sometimes. Like they try to break down some of the same things that we do sometimes, but sometimes their comments are a little silly. Did Noah stand a righteous man, but he lived in the time of Ab- but had he lived in the time of Abraham, he would have been insignificant, says Rashi. This is the same guy that also understands what the stone thing is from. So it says some would say a precious stone. So I'm kind of curious on where they got that tradition from, this precious stone, because they were, you know, understood it strong enough to put it in their translation here. So yeah, they. I don't know. I don't know if that was ever written down or if that's just something by word. It doesn't even say where they got that understanding. It is true that Noah was not nearly as great as Abraham. So why are they putting Abraham so far above Noah? They seem to be
Yeah. It's almost like
really
well, you know what? The Talmud, right? Is that what you're reading? Is the
yeah,
Talmud?
that's what it's from. Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I was thinking it was like the Quran or something that came from, the Arab side of things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because of Abram, they look at him as being the father of all the nations. And so anything before that doesn't count,
Mm,
you know,
right.
because he's above them. Doesn't matter that he was descended from them. It's like an idolized thing.
Feel like you would have a little bit more wisdom going from pre-flood to a post-flood situation, dealing with giants and Nephilim and stuff like this, and having to wait 120 years to build an ark to go through an epic year-long flood, and also be 600 years old at the time, versus being
Oh
a 100
gosh.
year old guy.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine
uh,
going through all of that.
yeah, that's insane. And then still living another 350 years to see how stupid people are going to get again.
So yeah,
Um,
that's got to be disheartening to go
right.
through all that cleansing and then see that within a few years they're all back into the debauchery of things.
Yeah, really, after all this. Um, but it is
I can
fair to
see him
say
throwing up
that
his
he would
hands.
have been far greater had he not been surrounded by corrupt and immoral people. So they're saying that Noah could have been better. They say this twice if he was surrounded by not so corrupt people. So are they trying to say that he was not as great of a man because he wasn't surrounded by greater people? And
He
Abraham
wasn't a
was or something?
Pharisees. He
I
wasn't a
guess.
Pharisees or a Sadducees. You
This is
know.
really weird. And then they're breaking down this phrase with God. He only, or he feared only God and was not enticed by astrology, and surely not by ideology or whatever, idolatry, however. He walked in the path of God, the path that God showed him, for he was a prophet. Okay.
Oh, but you know what? They're holding his drunkenness against him.
Probably, huh?
Yeah,
I
because I
think they
just thought
do
about
mention
that.
something about that. Let's jump to that. Noah's family. Wait, okay, let's
Yeah, I feel
see where
terrible
I'm
because
at.
I've taken you away from your wisdom study again.
Oh no, this is totally fine. Um, the more I can do to wake up, the better. Man, I've been struggling with that lately. Um, 15 cubits upward. Okay, we're still talking that. The water subsided. Go forth from the ark. Yeah, Hashem is what it says everywhere instead of Yahuwah. Um, can't even write out the letters, which is strange. Um, at least they have God and not G dash D,
Yeah, yeah,
which
I
is
hate that.
what a lot of like Safaria will do that sometimes too on certain text and whatever. It'll do that. I'm like, really? You can't even put an O in there? Like, this isn't even supposed to be
Oh,
his sacred name. It's just God.
yeah. Well, they
Uh,
didn't have vowels back in that day. Well, okay. So I'm gonna. This is where my snarky side comes out. This is where the filter falls off, the brain cell disengages, and then James 3 comes to mind because the tongue is full of sarcasm.
mhm.
Because I have one guy on a different server. I was listening to him one day, and he will not say the days of the week. He will not use God. He spells it out G-D, and I'm just
Right,
like, what is with? I mean, people think I'm nuts because of how religious I can get, and like talking to my sister about some of this stuff. But then there's that fanatical. That's the only way I can term it. And it sounds terrible. I don't mean it to sound like really super terrible, like I'm judging them. But there's that over extreme. Like you are losing people in your conversation. That's like somebody that just realized, we could say all these cool Hebrew words, and then they start speaking half English, half Hebrew to somebody that has no idea what they're talking about. None.
right.
And then they can't figure out why people are standing there looking at them strange, going, "Yeah, don't talk to that guy over there."
Yeah.
Just steer clear of that one.
Yeah, as much as I try to learn myself on some of these words and things like that, I was like, okay, I learned these words for like whenever I'm studying or something, and I might bring it up as, oh, that's this is this word and this is what it means, but not try to speak half English. And I'm like, I can't remember, especially in an English context, in an English mindset, all these random, poorly pronounced Hebrew words.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'm like, it again, it becomes like this cult following, this like fad of something to do, and it's like if this isn't about the understanding, this is about how you are perceived about what they think you understand.
Yep. Yeah, because I
Right.
used to be, I was talking to my
The
sister
popularity
and
contest. Yeah.
oh yeah, definitely. And talking to
Yeah.
my
Whoa, whoa,
sister,
whoa, whoa.
she's used to the words God and Jesus. She's not used to the words Yeshua or Yahweh
Right.
or however people pronounce it. I always pronounce it that way because it's just I don't know. It's how I learned it. I'm kind of stuck. I've tried doing it different ways. It just doesn't
Right.
roll off the tongue the same. But I said Yahweh one day and she goes, "Who's that?" And I went,
Right.
"God." So I had to retrain my brain that when I'm talking to her, I have to be sure to use the word God and Jesus versus Yeshua and Yahweh. And sometimes I'll slip up, that kind of thing. She told me I was brainwashed. Oh my gosh, you are so brainwashed. You're worse than mom was. And I was kind of laughing. I was like, well, I'll take that as a compliment in a way. But she forgets that our dad actually went through and tried studying the Hebrew more than our mother did. Our
Mhm.
mother walked the walk a little bit longer in her faith, she wasn't Torah observant, but I mean, she was all sorts of different religions. I think at the last she was an Episcopal. She had bounced from Baptist to Episcopalian. And at that point, my dad just quit going to church in general. But while he was in the church, he was the one that actually got all of us children studying and memorizing the word. That was part of, our daily tasks in his book. Because he was an assistant pastor, he was trying to uphold that points of views of you got to keep your house in order thing. And so, but once my mom like left him to, for her own debauchery of life, we've all forgiven them all for all of that. They're both gone now, so I shouldn't even be talking like this. But it was a learning experience for me because um, it showed me all these different paths that each of us have taken in our beliefs. Like my youngest two siblings, they are
Mhm.
totally agnostic atheists, even though we all grew up with like this religious foundation. And then the middle sister that I'm talking about, that I've been talking about, she is floating between Christianity and New Age mysticism. This whole thing that the secret knowledge movement. I think that's what I need to start calling it. The secret knowledge movement that Billy Carson and Dolores Claiborne or something like that. These people are pushing. My sister's eating this up like crazy. Her children are eating it up like crazy. And I'm seeing it infecting the Torah community. So I'm like, here we are over here arguing with each other over how to pronounce a name, and these people are over here being led astray down, a path of burning fire because their version of a witch versus our version of a witch is two different things, and therefore they see witchcraft as being okay because it's just following nature, not
Mm,
Satanism, kind of thing. And I forgot where I was
right.
going with that whole train of thought, but man, 4 hours on the phone to her, it was like, I have a headache. Can I take a nap now?
Here's
Because
that
she's
part
telling me.
about. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that it just cracks me up because she's like, "Oh, you're the worst. You're the worst when it gets because you've been so brainwashed." My son even thought I joined a cult, and I'm like, maybe if you just go join the conversations, you'd see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what's thought about me, among my family or whatever as well. But I guess they just don't really talk to me. Um, the only one that doesn't judge me is, like my mother, and she is into more of the new age, stuff, and not really into it, but curious, I should say, and more open to things, and kind of just, glazes over whenever I talk about, this kind of thing or something like that. But at least I can talk to her about it
Oh
and
yeah.
what have you, and she doesn't judge me for it, and I can show her, like stuff that I'm printing out that she has no idea what it says, like that bookend that I showed you, but she has no idea what it said. But I sent that to her because she's got the same printer. She's the one that got me into it, and there's like and we're starting a YouTube channel thing together too. So I got to figure out what I'm gonna have on there or not have on there. So I don't know if she wants things like this on there, but it would still be good to. I mean, I might just do a video on how to make a bookend without this text specifically on it, but
I don't know. I think it's a good way to plant seeds. I mean, there are people out there that are, you know, curious. I shouldn't say morbidly curious, but they are like a curiosity. Like last night, sitting in a Bible study group. Now we're getting off track again. Sitting in this Bible study group, the whole group was a debate group that was about Cat Williams and is he truly a Christian or is he like one of these like spokespeople that are trying to
right,
lead you astray a little bit? Think, oh my gosh, some of the rabbit trails that we got down through there was just absolutely crazy because I'm over here talking about spiritual warfare, and a lot of these other guys are like,
right,
you know, not that they was against spiritual warfare, but it was like, okay, we know who the enemy is. We keep talking about the enemy. How are we going to battle this? How are we going to be
right.
witnesses to other people? Oh my gosh! I think by the end of the conversation, this one guy, and I know you know who he is. He was he was talking like I was just like playing with fire, and we shouldn't
Right,
be playing with fire like that. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not out there trying to cast demons out of every person that I can see. As a matter of fact, I don't even really feel called to do that. I said, I feel called more to be the watchman on the wall. So doing studies like this is like absolutely fascinating for me because there's key things here that we're seeing Especially whenever we're looking into other texts that most people wouldn't touch because they're not part of the Bible, to grasp the truth. Because that's what I always tell my family. Just because I'm religious or I'm biblically based doesn't mean that I am closed minded. I want to go search for the truth. And if it takes us going through studies like this for hours on end, I'm more than happy to do it because this
Right.
gives me seeds to plant into those that are looking at it outside the Bible because some of them have rejected the Bible. And so I'm
Right.
trying to explain to this guy, you can't just go up to somebody and start, quoting the Bible, or pushing
Yeah,
the
you have to
Bible.
be able to relate to them and understand
Exactly.
their point of view. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm
And
like,
if you can
okay, I'll
find
take
that one little opening that is right between your understanding and their understanding to bridge that gap, and you know,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So finally, I got to the point where the more I talked to him, the more I wondered if he had any kind of experiences in his life that would have been considered paranormal experiences. And
right,
he admitted that he did because he has kind of a Native American background. But there was still this, like, I don't know, it's like this veil around him that in some areas he could still be like he was shutting it off, trying to make himself spiritually blind because he didn't want to go down that path because there is a temptation to dig deeper into the darkness than there was to say, okay, this is it. This is how far I'm going. Now go back, kind of thing. And I told him, I said, for me, I'm not going to go join an occultic club just because I want to see what they're studying and how they're
right,
doing this so I can preach against it. I feel like I told myself I walk through life half paying attention and pretty darn lazy till the father slaps me in the face with something. And then when it's brought to my attention, that's when I sit up and it's like this right here with Noah. We sit up, we're digging into this, we're looking for the truth, and I've sidelined you again. That's when I know the father's saying, this right here, this is the spirit of the enemy, or this is Hasatan. And yes, some people give him more credit than what he's due, but this is preparing you for a battle that could be coming if it isn't already in your doorstep. So now
right.
that you know the enemy, let's look for the key of, the key of some kind, the key of David thing. Speaking of which, another rabbit trail. It was the river winds that had mentioned the key of David. I went
Okay.
back through looking at my emails, and they were the ones that had talked about the key of David. So I'll have to
You
go
know
back
what they
through
had said about that?
and read that.
Like
Let me
roughly?
see if I can pull it up. Yeah, and then we'll go
Yeah.
back to the Noah thing because I am really super curious to get some of the answers on this because I have
Right.
yet to answer my cousin on the Colburn Bible thing, and now this secret knowledge thing. He was sending me these clips from Dolores Claiborne and I think her name's Dolores Claiborne. I don't know, Billy Carson, some of those guys that are into the I call it new agey crap, but the stuff we're not supposed to know from the fallen angels.
Right. Yeah.
I clicked on the wrong thing here. It'll take me a second. Okay, so while I'm looking this up, go ahead and tell me what you found in Noah. Sorry to derail you
Oh
again.
yeah. Let's see what they're saying here about Noah. So I'm gonna read from a few different things. So this is 9:20. Noah, man of the earth, debased himself and planted a vineyard. Uh, Basically, this is when he got off the ark. He planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk and uncovered himself within his tent. And Ham, his father, saw. This is strange how this is his father's nakedness and told his two brothers outside. So I'm going to stop there. But so immediately, right away, they have like this little commentary off to the side to tell you, whoops, this is going to freak out, what's going on in the chapter. So it says the intoxication and shame of Noah. So this is not the shame of Ham. This is the shame of Noah, I guess. So let's see. It says 20. Noah debased himself. The translation follows Rashi. Noah debased himself by craving wine so much that he planted a vineyard. So he's having a bad craving? or something. That, oh man, I just gotta plant a vineyard, and what Dead Sea Scrolls says something about like on the fifth years when he finally drank from it on the New Year's. I've seen other ones that had said like 9 years or something, but um, let's see. I lost where I was at. Okay. Debates himself praising wine so much that he planted a vineyard before any other trees. Other, it doesn't say that specifically, but okay. There's so much that's left out. I'm sure he planted other plants as well, but got to get that vineyard going too. Um, Other commentators render this phrase as Noah began instead of debased himself. Uh, Noah was the first to one to plant vineyards rather than individual grapevines. How do we get that from that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
No one plants individual grapevines. Like you need to trellis them and stuff if you want good grapes. And this is something I found out the hard way. And also kind of the natural way, because out here in Missouri, I mean, there's grapes everywhere. There's two major kinds. There's like a winter grape and a wine grape. It's literally just called wine grape, as far as I could figure out. Um, and they have very different leaves. And like the property that I had pretty close to here, I had a small property, and it was just completely overgrown. Had an insane amount of different species of plants, and definitely at least two different vines. And these vines got about that thick, like I don't know, 3, sometimes 4 inches thick, sometimes even thicker at the very base. And they would get 50 feet tall, and they would just go straight up all the different trees that were also, at least 50 feet tall, because they were so close together, because it's all overgrown, and they didn't branch out, and they just grew straight up. And so the vines had to do the same thing to get any kind of light. Um, and they don't grow any grapes like out there at all. Out here, I mean, I have them right here on the edge of my property as well, and just throughout the backyard as well. They grow right along the poison ivy and all that too, and the all the other vines. There's like, man, over 5 or 10 different vines out here. Um, and they don't grow any grapes, not naturally. And this is something I saw in California too. There was a park way out of town that was just covered. Every single tree was just covered in grapevines, and they would get grapes, but they're about that big and completely inedible, right? But apparently it's not a different species or anything. But the only way to make grapes is basically to leave it to where there's only two branches, which is what they do in vineyards today. Is they have one grapevine that splits out on the trellis and goes two different ways, so each grape only has two branches. So you heavily prune it to where it only has two branches that only go out like 3 or 4 feet each way, and then the other vine grows back on itself this way. So then, yeah, you have one continuous line of grapes, and this is where all the nutrition that the roots bring up gets concentrated into those fruit, and then you get very plump and rich fruit instead of basically seeds that drop everywhere. Which is pretty much all that's in those grapes that are unpruned. So this is a really strong lesson about pruning as well. But this is really the only way to grow grapes. So I don't know where they're getting this at.
Yeah, I'm
But
not too
yeah.
sure. And like you said, it could be the type of grapes because there's some wild grapes that grow on a fence about a block away from us. And I could tell by the leaves that it was a grapevine,
Hmm.
but I couldn't tell, like, I didn't know that some plants are male and female plants. So
Hmm.
some will produce fruit, some don't, but you have to have the two plants to pollinate. Well,
Yeah.
last year, um, we had quite a bit of rain last year, and I noticed that it grew actual little grapes. Yeah,
Hmm.
little tiny clusters of grapes. But like you said, they were like the end of a pencil, the eraser of a pencil.
Yeah.
They wasn't
Yeah.
very big. They were kind of
So
bitter, and there wasn't very many of them. And
so
what
if you
ones
took
there
that same
was,
plant and just chopped it even all the way down, and once it started growing out, you only leave the two major branches and just start pruning constantly, you'll get real grapes.
yeah.
If
And I've been
if you
thinking about
observe
whether or
that.
not I could take some cuttings and try that. I'm
Right.
really thinking about
Yeah,
that this
even
year.
better. Yeah, exactly, even better. So if you took those cuttings and then started a new plant, which is also why they do like grafting for vineyards. So whenever you see the vineyard is
Hmm.
done, they'll just chop it all down, but then they'll take new cuttings that are already started, chop those off, and then graft them to the old plant. That way you have very strong roots to feed this new plant, and it grows even better and bigger and faster. But again, it's still super pruned down because grapes can just grow endlessly long, crazy long, but then they are not fruitful, right? So quantity over
Yeah,
quality sort of thing.
yeah,
Let's see
absolutely.
what else this says. Okay, according. Okay, he. Individual grapes. So great was his craving for wine. Where does it say this? Accordingly, this phrase introduces the ensuing episode. Okay, wow. They're really embellishing on the story here. The man of the earth, the word Aish, so he, man, implies mastery. Noah was the master. It's just he, because the earth had been saved thanks to him. Alternatively, Noah is associated with the earth because he was skilled at working it. When is he associated with the earth? Uh, I
That
don't know.
definitely sounds like an embellishment kind of thing.
Yeah, I've heard the opposite, him associated with water, or because he devoted himself to cultivating the earth rather than to building cities. Okay. And that's also a huge assumption. We really don't have any story of Noah after the flood except for this one account. Um, so let's see what they say about his son, real quick. Let's see what this says. Noah began to work, or began to be a man working in the earth. He found a vine which the river had brought away from the Garden of Eden. Okay, this is even more than this is saying. That's weird. He had planted it in a vineyard. So instead of something from the boat, this is just something that's been floating around, and it flourished in a day. Okay. And its grapes became ripe, and he pressed them out. I hope that means it didn't like grow in a day.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And then he drank the wine and was drunken. Okay, yeah, that's the same verse. Okay, and he made himself naked in the midst of his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, beheld the nakedness of his father and showed to his brethren outside. Shem and Japheth took a mantle and bare it upon the shoulders of each, and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their fathers, and their face were turned back, and the nakedness of their fathers they did not behold. Okay, this is all good.
Okay, so I have a
Noah woke from
question
his
on that.
wine. Uh huh.
A lot of people claim that the nakedness was him actually raping his mother or something of that nature. How do they come up with that?
Because they have no understanding and they're trying to find greater understanding where there is none, and they're trying to pervert the text if you ask me, but um, because they're taking that from Leviticus or wherever, Exodus or something like this, Deuteronomy, where it's talked about the nakedness. Oh, you've uncovered the quote unquote
Oh,
nakedness
right.
of your father by sleeping with your mom or his wife, whether that's your mom or not. Um, so it's supposed to, I think, imply it's as if you've uncovered the nakedness, or it's as
Right.
if you have been with your father if you've slept with his wife or something like this, right? But again, it's that kind of caveman talk, but it just depends on how they want to translate it. And again, they're reading from English, but if we look at, let's see, Dead Sea Scrolls, I always forget how much information is actually in here or not, but let me just pull it up for the sake of this real quick. 125. Why did that
And
not
I posted a clip of their notes editing chat, so I wouldn't forget.
happen to my screen? Okay. So in this Dead Sea Scroll, we see a little bit more. It's really broken up at this spot, but let me see what it says real quick. So this is the one where it dictates what the 120 years thing is about. which Jasher gets right. Jubilees glances over as well, just like Genesis does. And just Cephas, I think, gets it wrong somehow, um, which is interesting that they contradict each other because I'm assuming he's going off a tradition or something too. He adds his little commentary about what this 120 years was about, but this is undeniable because it literally says how old Noah is. And this is just Genesis, right? Why is this not in Genesis anymore? If this was in Genesis and the Dead Sea Scrolls, at least
Right.
one fragment of it. And it literally says the day of the week. Obviously, it would just say the first day, second day, third day. But the way that this is translated, I just left it like this, just for people to get offended. I guess I don't know, but um,
That works.
this is the only text anywhere that I've ever seen that it says the first day of the week, the 17th day of the month, or something like this. I've never seen this in any other text where it actually mentions the day of the week. And wouldn't you know it, that these all line up with the Zadok calendar, of course, right? Um,
Okay.
so if you look up these dates and look on the calendar, you're like, oh, look, it is the first day. And that only works on that calendar. So I use that sort of as a half proof thing, I guess. But anywho, so that's interesting. And then it specifically says on the events that it was 7 days apart between each event of the dove that flies out, and it kind of gives the date for all that and what have you. And then it comes to a lot of fragments over here. So I don't know if this actually says anything extra. This just says, for some reason, I was thinking it was in here. 1 full year. Then Noah woke from his wine and knew that his younger son Ham had done to him. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan. He will, he will be his brothers meant to be. He will serve his brothers meant to slave." I don't know why that's not. I don't know. That's clearly a comment. Okay, meaning, meaning. I don't know. This is weird translation thing here. He did not curse Ham, but on the contrary, his son. So this is the only explanation we get for this. Because God had already blessed Noah's sons, so they've already got their inheritance. This is why. So in order to curse someone, you have to take something away from them. When to bless someone,
Right.
you give something to them. So if they've already got their inheritance, so he is going to curse his son instead. And the uh, the tents of Shem will they dwell. So basically, Shem will live in the land that Canaan steals from him, meaning Abraham, whatever. And then he gave the land to Abraham, his friend, which this is very strange. So this is the only text I've really seen that also supports the Masoretic, because the Masoretic is the only text that supports the idea that Noah could have known Abraham. This is also a Jewish traditional understanding,
Right.
but
Yeah.
the Septuagint and even the Samaritan Pentateuch don't give any room for that whatsoever. Like, he would have been long dead. He may have known Shem at the end of his life, but not Abraham. Um, I mean, sorry, Abraham would not know Noah. But in the Masoretic, it's possible, but it also just doesn't seem to work as well. So I'm still split and divided on that. And then why it says he gave the land to Abraham right here already. Um, this seems like it's way too early in the story for that. So I don't know if this is like a commentary, like later, like, oh, later it would be given to him. Like I don't think that this is Noah directly saying that, and it could be like friend as in like brother as in the same following. So that could be another interpretation,
Yeah.
but who knows? Because this is, by the way, also translated by Judaism, right? All the Dead Sea Scrolls. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
ones in control of
Definitely.
all of it. So keep that in mind. And then it also says some other dates that kind of misalign and whatever. But I thought it had said more about that. But in all the accounts that I've seen about this, it's just simply that he is doing unrighteous behavior and is telling or exposing his father for the sake of exposing him for no reason at all, right? He's in his own personal tent where he can be naked all he wants. you
Yeah.
know, and if you do happen to see that, why not just cover him up and then just that's it, right? And and with Jubilees, you see um, why he was like this. So you see in Jubilees, this is him celebrating New Year's after 5 years of waiting for fresh fruit to be eaten. So this is not necessarily even like first fruits or anything like that. And I don't know if he ate of the grapes before he made wine with it. It doesn't specifically say anything like that. He could have given that 6 months beforehand at the. I think he might have even had them ready by first fruits of new wine, which would have been fine. He could have offered up that new wine, but never actually had real wine for himself until this time. So basically, he fermented it for 6 months. So let me get that right quick. Da, 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 da. This is also where we get our first of the season celebrations, which is really what it should be called. Let's see, where's the. I could probably just search for it. Okay. Noah makes wine. So in the first year, in the seventh week, blah 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 blah. Noah planted vines on the mountain, which the ark had rested, named Lubar. I really got to figure out what that's supposed to mean. And they produced fruit in the fourth year. And this is pretty much how long it takes to get real fruit out of a vine, right? It takes a while to mature,
Mhm.
right? And also that means he's waited until after the third year whenever you plant a tree, which might also, you know, include vines. Um, that you're supposed to wait until the third year to accept any fruit from that tree, right? Which is true, especially like with apples or anything like this. Um, and apparently also figs takes 3 to 4 years to get a good fig. They produced fruit in the fourth year. He guarded their fruit and gathered it in the seventh month. So he's waited, until half year point. So in the first of the seventh month would be 6 months if they were ready, at the beginning of the year or something like this. He made wine from them and put them in a vessel and kept it until the fifth year. So now we're, halfway during the year, first of the seventh month, or somewhere around there, and then first of the fifth year until the first day. So roughly 6 months. The new month of the first month. So the first day of the first month is really what that new month thing means because in Hebrew it's literally just the word new. So it's like the new of the month when the month is new.
Yeah.
It's implying month, but it doesn't actually say month. It's literally just the word new. So it just means the first of the month, right? Um, so when it says the new month or the new moon of the fourth month or something like this, then that's just the first of the month. Um, all throughout scripture, I see either the middle of the month or the first of the month talk like that. So the middle of the month literally means the 15th, and everywhere I've seen where it says that it ends up being the 15th. It's literally the middle of the month, um, out of 30 days, right? He celebrated with joy, and he made burnt sacrifices to Yahuwah: one young ox, one ram, 7 sheep, each 1 year old. Um, and even this phrase I'm kind of curious about because in Hebrew this just says son of the sheep. It doesn't actually specifically say 1 year old, which I thought was interesting. So similar to this, kid of the goats and kids of the goats. So I think this just means young. I don't know at what point you would stop calling it a son of a sheep. I don't know, but
Right.
through tradition they've said 1 year, which is probably where this translation understanding comes from too. But who knows? Um, that he might make atonement. Therefore, let's see where he gets to the wine. He placed on the offerings and mingled it with oil upon it. So he's following all the Levitical laws. Look at that. Afterwards, he sprinkled wine on the fire, which he had previously made on the altar. He had placed incense on the altar, sweet savor to its sin. So he's making it smell good. He rejoiced and drank of this wine. So he's doing priestly duties. He's doing offerings properly, and he's giving up his part of his portion first to the father, and he's celebrating with joy, right? This isn't like he's depressed and he's drunk and he's just craving for or hankering for some alcohol or something like that he's just
Right.
jonesing or
Yeah.
something. Especially after what, this is now 6 years without having it. I don't know. He could have had wine on the ark or something, but just ran out. I don't know, but or just simply had old wine. Probably ran out. But it was evening, and he went into his tent, being drunk. So after being filled up with wine and food and everything, people get sleepy naturally. It doesn't mean that you're blacked out drunk or anything like that. You just get sleepy. He's going to bed. It's bedtime. Chances are he made his offering, at night anyways, or usually it's, at twilight in the morning or twilight at night. And then that means you're celebrating with people throughout the night. So it's probably late night. So yeah, he's tired. He went to sleep and he's just like, all right, whatever, and takes off his tunic or whatever it may be, probably slips right off. Easy peasy, right? And then he's uncovered in his tent because maybe he just don't want to sleep in his clothes. Whatever. That's probably just how they all slept. But he's in his own tent. And then Noah saw his father naked and went out and told his brothers. Like, I think that's as complicated as the story needs to be, right? Like, why you need to look into this, why you want to defame Noah for some reason, I have no idea. The man was so righteous that he was spared from a world cataclysm, basically. And yet, the first thing you're going to do is say, oh, no, his first act is a sinful one that's just absolutely horrible. No.
Well, and
Or
that's,
at
I
least
think that's the way
or
the
him,
enemy.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the way the enemy works to create that double-mindedness, that doubt, that questioning
Right.
of Yahweh's words. I
Right.
really
And
do.
I'm like, yeah, it's just doubting and it's creating confusion for no reason. I'm like, this is not the God of confusion. So why should this be confusing? Right? This is simple. This is understandable. This is relatable. This is, mind you, this is also not like a little kid who doesn't know what he's doing. They're all over 100 years old, right? All the sons,
Yeah.
right? They're only a few years apart, like 2 and 3 years apart. So they're all 100 and something years old. They should know better. And even by pre-flood standards, they're still considered an adult. So they know better. And I'm sure he was taught. And this is not their first feast day, I'm sure. So they should know more than better, right? Uh, so why would he have to go tell his brothers? Why was he looking in the tent to begin with, right? What's he doing
Yeah.
looking for his father or something like that? Did you not know what he had just done? He performed this huge service and had this big festival. Finally, a first great thing to celebrate. He's going to be tired. Why are you going to go looking? What's he
Well,
looking for, right?
they probably left out the part where, maybe Ham had drunk the wine and
Right,
the spirit of the flesh
right,
overruled spirit and spirit.
right.
And
And
to me, that would make sense.
the implication is like that he's like either trying to say like, oh look, dad's naked over there or something, or like, why is he even telling his brothers? What's the point of that? Like, is it to make himself look better somehow? Like, oh, look at what, why is he uncovered? He's uncovered himself. He shouldn't be because he's the head of the family or something like this. He's a priest. I don't know, but
Well, I heard a theory because it fell in line with what some people believe, like if he raped his mother. He was
right.
usurping his dad because when you look at David's son who went and put up that tent and then slept with all the concubines, he was
Hmm.
basically inserting his authority over his dad. And some people believe that's what's going on here with Ham.
Yeah,
He
but he would
he
have been
disagreed
killed.
with that. Exactly,
That's
exactly,
also part of the same law that they're referencing, is that he should be stoned to
exactly.
death and that the woman should be killed and burned, more so, right? So it's like this should be wiped off the face of the earth, even if it was his own wife. If she had gone along with this and not woke up her, that means she's also sinning. So you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make any sense. And then where's Ham's wife? Because by the way, they're all married. And
Yeah,
probably
and
have children already at this point, so like it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. You have to ignore a lot of things to come to that absurd conclusion.
Oh yeah, because the next one's going to be that. Oh, he's a gay. He was just
Oh
having
yeah, like
unclean
yeah,
lot
even worse when it
moment.
comes to like, oh yeah, no, he's sleeping with his son. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Are you
Yep.
kidding me? I
They-
mean, he's clearly not. I mean, I that's just blasphemy if you ask me, right? I mean, that's absolutely horrible. Like, why would you even want that? And why do they get so excited when talking about these stories? Oh yeah, son or Ham really, slept with his father or his mother or something like this. I'm like, that's not wisdom, if you ask me. If you cannot control your tongue for even a moment to even think about this kind of thing, or even bring it up as like, hey, could this be a possibility? Is this something that could really happen? It doesn't really, like think about it and rationalize reasonably with people, but instead it becomes this story to tell and to show off to people like, oh, that they know so much more or something. I'm like, but you don't know. You weren't there. It doesn't say it in the text. You're just making yourself a fool, right?
yeah, and that's where James 3 keeps slapping me in the face, just smacking me right up in the face. James 3, and then praying for that wisdom, because if we pray for the
Mm-hmm.
wisdom with our heart being cleansed, then He is going to give us the truth. He's going to show us the truth. Gosh, I just
James just
realized
keeps
this.
coming up too much, huh?
Oh God,
I
yeah,
I
Blondie
even
and I
had
were
to bring
talking
this
about
up
that.
last night too. We were studying Luke or whatever, and they just kept saying something over and over and over. I'm like, hold on, guys, hold on, guys, hold on, guys. And then finally I brought it up, and I just left it there like this on the screen for a while. No one said anything. Um, I don't know if they were even reading it or whatever, but I feel like it's kind of pointless for me casting this sometimes. But oh well, I do it anyways. So yeah, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing will um, of your faith produces endurance or patient waiting, basically wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So basically, it was about, and I also brought this up last night too because it was funny because there was the Japanese and even Thai phrase that was so the Japanese parable or proverb was if you or you will fall 7 times, but you will get up on the eighth, or for the eighth time, right? You'll get up eight on the eighth. Basically, it's a weird way of saying like, you know, if you fell, try again, kind of thing, right? Um,
Hmm.
because there's this universal understanding and wisdom with anyone who's ever lived life at all that you will understand that you'll really appreciate all the trials that you go through, right? Because it builds character. Because they had brought up basically, now that I remember, they had brought up someone had brought up like, why do we have to live here? Why can't we just live with the Father and this and that? And I'm like, okay, well then that ends up being like the angels, and this was also about the parable of the prodigal son, right? And West Blaze was bringing up, oh yeah, do you know Sean's interpretation that this is really just angels? I'm like, okay, you can kind of see some similarity, but it's clearly not just about that. This is the wisdom of going out in the world and trying for yourself. And they were trying to make the younger son like some wicked guy or something like that. It doesn't say that he did anything wrong. He just was naive, basically. He was a young kid who was naive and squandered his money and went out and tried to make a name for himself, right? And didn't know better, didn't have the wisdom because it takes that experience. And he squandered his money, and then a famine came. He didn't know that, but he wasn't in the mindset of preparing for the worst and what have you, right? And he wasn't living in his father's house, which probably had that prepared for him. So he had a lot of things taken for granted. And he didn't have grain houses and what have you, right? So then he had to become a bondservant for someone else, and it may imply that this is a outside of the faith person or something like this because he's raising pigs, and he's clearly starving too because he says that I'm talking out of my rear
He
here. Let
was
me just
eating out of the pig's
shut.
trough.
Yeah, so what I had saw on that is, do I still have Luke up? I do. So right here. So he was wanting to eat these beans right here, right? So it says pods or husk. So he was longing to fill his belly, is what it specifically says here, with the pods that the pigs ate, which is actually a really good thing to eat too, by the way. I guess it's from this tree, the carob tree, um, which I guess I can pull up real
Looks
quick.
like chocolate.
Yeah, it does. A lot of trees that of flour recipes and stuff. I saw like chocolate shake looking things and all kinds of stuff with it. But um, really nutritious and apparently helps you with digestion, I guess is the main thing, which is kind of funny. But basically, he wanted to eat pig slop, and no one gave him anything. So he's being mistreated by not, righteous masters. And then he wants to go home, and he tells himself, like, hey, let me go tell my father that I can be a hired servant. I'll go work for money and not even be considered his son anymore, right? I'm okay with that. Like, he's humbling himself and wanting to go back in repentance and saying that he sinned against heaven and against him, not in the fact that he's going out and just doing wicked things, is that he didn't stick around the wisdom of his father and the protection of his father. So he's like, I clearly, maybe his father's like, no, don't go, don't go. We don't get the full story, whether this is a real story or
Yeah.
not, whatever. But the idea is that the older son who did stay and did all of these things isn't being rewarded because he's just doing what he's doing. But the idea between all these different parables is that you're going to be rewarded because you suffered, because you had to go through all of this. You're going to have more valuable and deeper character and have more appreciation and understanding and have this wisdom that goes with it. And you're going to be able to have so much by this experience of living the hard life that you'll be able to judge angels yourself, right? That you'll be above them in authority and have to, make the decisions for them because they are like, in this case, that analogy is they are the older son because, they're born first, they stayed with the father the whole time. Not that we see that the angels are ever like jealous in this sense or anything like this, because we see that this son is jealous and complaining and crying and that like, oh man, you didn't
Well,
even give me a goat. But
and that's where the spirit of betrayal comes in. He's feeling
mhm,
betrayed by his dad because of
there
his
you
so-called
go. I'm gonna circle
favoritism.
right back to that.
Hmm. How I can
Yeah.
circle all these things back in
Oh,
on
I know,
each.
right? It's too good. So then this is where I had to like look up like what the fattened calf was, and I thought this was interesting. I didn't know this at least since yesterday, um, about what the fattened calf specifically was. So this was a cow or a calf that was set aside to stay in the barn. You don't go out in the field. You don't eat whatever you want. We are going to control what you eat, how much you eat. You're not going to get exercise, so you're going to be nice and fatted, and that you're going to be sacrificed and served, slaughtered, let's say, butchered and served for
Right.
a special event, right? And he's sacrificing his special event for his son and not for something that he needs. So he's not going to give this offering for a supplication for something. He's not going to give it for any atonement or anything like that. It's not for himself or anyone else that he knows. This is for a celebration that his son is now quote unquote alive again, which is clearly seems like some reference to the resurrection because he says, "For the son of mine was dead, and he is alive again." Right? He was dead to me, like he was without contact, I'm sure. And if he was a bondservant, that means he probably served 6 years and then was freed. Right? So then he came home, and that's after losing all his money and trying to do things himself. So it's probably been more than 10 years that his son's been gone. And of course, he would think that he's dead, right? Especially if he's serving some guy outside the faith or something like this, or maybe an unrighteous guy. He's not going to be in contact with him. He might be far away, whatever. His son was dead to him. And yet, the other son is not grateful that his brother's back and is just complaining that, oh man, but you wouldn't even, you never even gave me a young goat. So basically, a regular offering, a regular meat for me and my friends, but yet you're going to give him the best of the family's meat for just himself, and they're celebrating with music and all this and dancing. I mean, he's glad that his son's alive again and part of his family, and he's giving him the robe, so the best robe, a ring, sandals. He's adorning him, so it also sounds like resurrection. And I'm certain that there is a fattened calf waiting for us at the first resurrection for that wedding feast or what have you, right? Um, yeah, so I think this is interesting. People try to again associate it too much to being a literal interpretation of like, oh, this is only angels and men or something like that. Or I heard even like Ephraim and Judah or something like that, and the two tribes. I'm like, it's just take the story for what it is. Like this is this is a man
Yeah,
with two sons,
exactly.
and the son is
Right?
learning wisdom through the hard way. But not to say that you shouldn't learn the hard way either. You should try to go out there and do things for yourself and have that perspective. And this is why I hear about even like with people from other countries, they're you know often their first advice for Americans is just go to one other country. That's it. Just go. Just go to one other country and that's it. It's self explanatory. Just go to one other country and you will have that perspective that you need to be in your own country, right? Because a lot of other people often do, especially in Europe, often go between places because of the European Union and what have you. And they think that we're very untraveled. And yeah, we have such a huge land that it's really hard to do that. And often we might not want to go down to Mexico, and it's not really that much of a culture shock to go up to Canada. So it's like, where are we going to go? We have to fly somewhere, and it's really expensive and difficult. But it also does kind of isolate us in this idea, and all of our pop culture stuff is also American and whatever too. So we don't really get very cultured, naturally. So it's hard to have this understanding, and this is something that I didn't even realize was going to happen whenever I went to Thailand because I had been, Bahamas or, Hawaii or something like that before. I was lucky enough to go to those places, but I haven't really been to another country. Bahamas was pretty much, like the United States, it was controlled by England, but it was close enough to Florida, right? It's a very tourist town or whatever. Um, both places I at least learned that they had a different understanding of what it meant to be kind to somebody. So that was interesting. But in Thailand, it was just completely different, completely different. Um, and you definitely have this appreciation for all the things in your own place. And when you do get back home, you appreciate more of what you've had, good or bad, right? And you just have this understanding, and often you can bring some of that wisdom back with you and go, man, these people did this specific thing better, right? Like, we have like the bidet thing in our bathroom because, I, you know, TMI maybe, but I rarely use toilet paper and it's usually just to dry, not to clean, right? And because we have a sprayer and you just wash every time and you never have any kind of problems afterwards. But in Thailand, that's the standard. The only time you don't see that is maybe in a hotel, um, but otherwise it's everywhere. And or in public restrooms they might not have it, of course. And in public restrooms they also might have like just the thing that you squat down on the floor, which was weird. And I saw a gas station that was like that, and it was really horrifying because the whole place was just covered in urine, but
It's
with an
funny that you
overflowing
should.
tub. It was weird.
It was
Yeah.
funny that you're bringing this up because I seen an antique one, and it looked like a little bathtub, and then it had. I mean, it was like a sink, but it like was shaped like your backside, like you'd sit in it and
Oh,
kind of
really?
soak your butt in it, kind of. Yeah, it wasn't like a typical spray the water on there. It was more like you filled it up with water, you sat in it, cleansed yourself, and then went on the way. And my husband and I were sitting there talking about these little bidets because I never even knew what they were until I was watching some YouTube videos one time. And I was like, okay, what is the deal with this thing here? And he had to explain it to me because I've never been to other countries before. I mean, I've traveled the West Coast and I've traveled to, parts of Missouri, but I've never really gone out and experienced life, kind of thing. And I'm almost afraid to nowadays with the way the world's going. But I've always wanted to go like over to some foreign countries, like coming from a Scottish Irish background. I was like, oh, I want to go to Scotland. Ooh, I want to go to Ireland. Ooh, I want to go to all these different places like this. And my husband's over here like, been there, you don't want to go. Been there, you don't want to. I'm like, you're taking the fun away. But I think in order to satisfy my curiosity about it, because I've always enjoyed looking at different cultures, the way they live, especially in the primitive, I call it primitive kind of living, the off grid living. I've always been fascinated by that. How do they do this? Exactly, exactly. And so yeah, so he's I've noticed he's been watching over my shoulder some of these, videos that I watch it because like there's this couple from Azerbaijans or however you pronounce that, up in the mountains there, and they've got this beautiful setting. And I thought here's one of the things that cracked me up about this was I looked to see how many followers they had. They had like 6.5 million followers, and they have like three different YouTube channels. It took me a while to figure out they had three different YouTube channels. And I thought, these people are raking in the dough. You know they're raking in the dough through the YouTube things, but their lifestyle does not show any of it. Maybe according to people in their village looking in on them, but it's like they've taken that money and poured it right back into their village to build up their settings to keep doing things on an off grid fashion. And there was a gal there was one from Japan and there was one from China. There's one from Germany, which is interesting because those three women are all of Asian descent. And so I was like, have you ever noticed you like migrate towards a certain thing as you're studying it out? And then you sit there, it looks like you're almost obsessed with like that kind of a culture thing. So you get to a point where it's like, oh, this one fascinates, and then you start studying that one out. Well, that's how I've been. And I figured out my problem why. I'm a foodie. It took the father showing me that food can become an idol to me because I was raised that food was a big thing when you got around my dad's family. My mom's family, not so much, but my dad's family, everything is based around food. And they're all very large people. Well, they were, most of them passed away. And so, one of the things that drew me to looking into this is in Kansas, I don't know how it is in Missouri, but here in Kansas, this is all a meat and potatoes kind of state. That's all they serve around here most of the time. Meat, potatoes, in various different ways. And I'm one of those that I like boring, everyday, same foods. I want something that has flavor, something that has culture, or something. So there's days that we'll be like, hey, let's go eat some Mexican food. Well, where? Because I mean, we live in a land that you can't really find any of that stuff. So there's a few Mexican restaurants around here, but it's not the same as if you would have went to Arizona and got like the authentic kind of Mexican food. And I'm not saying this to bash these guys. It's like, oh my gosh, if you're going to make this and claim that this is from your culture, then it needs to taste like your culture, not a jack in the box. Yeah. And so then there's like right. Yeah. 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 I'm not Yeah, I'm not sure because like I said, there's an Oriental restaurant that used to be ran by this Korean family, and when I was eating it, I was like, man, this is like the best food ever. Let's go there at least once a month to go out to eat. Because I mean, these are like luxury things for us because of where we live, not because we can't afford it. I could afford it. As a matter of fact, it's probably a good thing I live where I live. Otherwise, I'd never cook, and then I'd be like 600 pounds. But in this case, it was like we have to drive 45 miles to go get this Oriental food in order to, enjoy it. Well, then I went someplace, it was in a bigger city where they actually had more authentic, like you said, the more authentic kind of Oriental food. And it just like ruined me for going out to eat. But you're so cute. So what I've been doing is like hooking up with a couple of friends or people that I meet, and I'd be like, "Hey, let's swap recipes," because I don't want to go to a restaurant and think that I'm eating something that's authentic, and then not have that, experience that it's not really that authentic. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Hey, I got something that just came up, so I gotta get going here, and then I gotta get ready for tonight too. So, alrighty. Well, okay, sounds great. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
we were in. Let me blow that up. And she's saying like, because I was kind of mentioning like these are all just like your end goal. This is your goal of what to be or what to look out for when you finally got to that point of wisdom, right? It doesn't actually teach you how to get there. At least specifically right here. And all these proverbs from other cultures that seem to line up with the same thing all do the same thing. It's just like this idea. Whereas like Buddhism and other religions like that will often teach you how to get there, but they don't really so much teach you what the end goal is or more so what it truly leads to or something like that. But again, often there is a lot of similarities. A lot of speaking of this greater creator, this greater God, or this greater heaven, or something like this, which all sounds very familiar with everything that the Bible teaches. Um, so whether it's twisted or perverted or something like that, whether by accident or on purpose over time, the teaching is still good. And this is what I'm starting to come to the understanding of whenever Jesus says all scripture is good, right? If it can be used for good, right? Um, is for the benefit of man, right? Is whatever we write down that we find is wisdom and we can benefit from that by actually doing what is written, then that is scripture, right? Scripture just means things that are written down. Which I'm sure that would offend a lot of people, right? Because they're like, well, no, scripture is only this and scripture is only that. Well, oh, I consider this scripture. I'm like, are they words on a page? It is scripture. Whether they are quote unquote inspired by God or not is the question that's usually at hand. But if I can read something from some other culture, even if it's Hinduism or something like this, and see honest good teachings of good morals and things like that, where you just happen to have these other titles or these personifications of these traits addressed to as these gods or false gods or whatever, right? And again, they even believe that these were just regular people or real beings at some point, which is even what happens with just regular kings a lot of the time, like especially Nimrod or something like this, where they're turned into these god kings, right? Which is really all like Elohim means, right? Even the word God is just king. It's just a higher king. It's the king of kings, high king, or what have you, right? It's the king over kings. It's the emperor, the whatever, right? Those who are above the kings that you see here. So even this dead king can be above the king that you see here, which is also part of this understanding of like ancestral worship and stuff. What they're really trying to do is pay respect to those that have not only just died, but that had had some sort of understanding of wisdom. They're trying to say, hey, how can I glean off of this person who has died, right? Um, there's actually a Soundgarden quote that I was about to make, but sharpen your wits on a dead man's skull, which is what that means, right? So you're trying to learn from someone who is dead, which is no different than reading their words, right? And hopefully they had had some sort of words or some sort of tradition or something that was passed down from their great great grandfather or something like this that they're trying to live by. That I see is righteous. That is good behavior. Now, again, whether that's watered down with some other sort of beliefs or distorted in some sort of way, yeah, that can be unfortunate. But you got to look for the positives in things and not be so negative about everything and be so judgmental about everything. You're not going to win people over that way. You're not going to invite them to some greater truth by just berating and bashing everything that they know and understand, right? Just not going to work, especially if you ever do step out in the world. You're going to find that people just do not have the capability to have an understanding of certain things that we read in scripture. Definitely not right off the bat, because they just grew up in a completely different world than you. So we have to be careful about that kind of thing. And I know I keep looking at myself over on this other screen instead of the camera. I don't really like to look at the camera, so sorry if that bothers anyone. Um, but yeah, so we were reading these proverbs, and it's just general knowledge. A lot of it is very obvious and common sense, but often we don't even follow our own common sense, which is the issue, right? So again, all of these where there's no oxen, where there's no tractor, let's say in our modern terms, there's no grain, there's no abundance of crops, more so, right? By the strength of the ox, you can obviously literally grow crops. You can grow a small plot pretty easily by yourself. You can even do like no-till gardening and stuff. But when you want to do something on a large scale in order to not feed you some bread sometimes or something like that for a couple months, this is to feed you for the next year or two, or be able to sell your excess for other things, right? You need to be able to make money off of this, or make some sort of living off of this, or trade for it, right? This is why you work so hard with an ox, um, to produce more than you need, because that's also a wise thing. This is part of that prodigal son story thing too, right? To be prepared. So you can seek wisdom first, or you can learn it the hard way, as long as you come into that wisdom, right? And actually do something with it. That doesn't absolutely mean that you need to go through all these hard times. And I'm sure you'll definitely be rewarded and congratulated for your righteousness in all that, and your accomplishments and your hard work. But your hard work can come from hard experiences that you have to work hard to get out of, and humble yourself to get out of, or it can come from humbling yourself in the understand of discipline, right? Where you discipline yourself to make sure you do not go off that path, that you do things for the sake of someone else, even like planting a tree knowing that your grandkids will eat from it and not you. um, that is something of wisdom. That's also, I think, a parable from other countries. I think even Japan and stuff too, right? Is like having, I don't even know how to quote that. I'll have to look for that while I'm ranting here. um, let's see. Proverb. Planting a tree. Is it a Greek? Okay, society. A society grows great when an old man plants a tree in whose shade they will never sit. That is a Greek proverb. That is going to have to go on the board, let's say. Going to have to figure out how to word all of this stuff. And I don't know if Greek proverb is enough quotation here, but that's what I'm going to go with for now. Greek proverb. So I'll have to figure out where that comes from. But yeah, that's the one I was looking for right there, is that they, which I'll say will, I just get annoyed at the word shall a lot. Sounds pretentious. A society grows great when an old man, and this is another thing that wisdom brings, is community. Wisdom brings community. Wisdom breeds wisdom as well, right? When you have people who see the benefit of that wisdom and want to learn more of that wisdom. This is something that we've really lost in our, capitalism societies and stuff like this today, where we don't rely on each other. We rely on the money that we make, right? More than anything. And our society starts falling. Um, because we don't do selfless things like this. Anything that is selfless is wisdom. Wisdom is selfless. Foolishness is selfishness, right? Lawlessness is selfishness. Lawfulness is selflessness, right? It's all the same, right? Um, let's see what these proverbs. There's even some proverbs that align with this right here, but um, some of these I have to go through and try to fix the translation, and see what's words are being used, like rod or something like this, right? And I'll see how much I like using this wisdom right here. I know sometimes I might say wise, but I'm not going to highlight that the same way as wisdom here. And if, doing this, personifying this as female or capitalizing it as a person or something bothers anyone, just let me know. But this is not to, mean that this is a specific person or character or anything like that. This is just the Father's understanding. Wisdom, that's all it is, right? Possibly personified as a woman, just as like the gentleness of it, right? Um, let's see. A scoffer that seeks wisdom. A scoffer seeks wisdom, sorry, in vain, so for no reason. But knowledge is easy. So in this case, I'm going to just highlight that like that for now. But knowledge is easy for one who understands. So these are the words I need to kind of look up on what those are. So you have three words that pertain to the same type of thing. So basically, knowledge comes easy. True knowledge, usable knowledge, comes easy to those who have understanding, who have wisdom, which is what that is. It's understanding. It's being able to have this intuition and understanding in different situations. It's having that life experience. It's being clever, right? Wisdom is clever. Wisdom is intelligence, right? Now, someone who is still self centered but has educated themselves will count themselves as intelligent because they think they know a lot. Memorizing things does not make you intelligent, right? What was it? The ability to talk does not make you intelligent, something like that. Is that from like Lord of the Rings or something? But yeah, that's again wisdom. You will find wisdom in every little corner, and a lot of these things are just old proverbs as well. But yes, even in pagan societies or whatever you might like to call them, you will find wisdom with righteous men, right? You will find wisdom with these philosophers, with these scholars, with the scholars, right? This is what wise men were. They were scholars. They were people who didn't count themselves as intelligent. Oftentimes they were pretty humble, right? And they were always calling themselves a student, right? That they were not the master, that they had to go find more masters to go learn more things. And they were often all of these old philosophers and stuff like that. Oh, I don't know, think, Da Vinci or something like this. It's not super old. But they had talents and interest in so many things. And this is something that I, you know, both hate myself and love myself for is, the fact that I've kind of let myself loose way back in the past where I'm like, hey, do I really have to limit myself? And that was, a can of worms, of course. And that turned into a lot of interests, but a lot of understanding and wisdom as well, right? Where there's, whenever I try a new thing out or a new skill, there's so many things that I can relate that thing to. I'm like, oh yeah, this part's a little bit is like this, and this is like this, and this is like this. You start having a lot of beginner's luck because it's not new to you anymore, right? It's not really new. It's just a combination or a new version of something you already are familiar with. And you don't really have to do a lot of something to become familiar with it, to have a good understanding of it. Just like visiting a country one time will give you a very, very big perspective compared to someone who has not done that. Even if you were there for a week or a month or something like this, just visiting somewhere else, living someone else's life basically for a minute to be able to stand in their shoes. Um, Obviously, if you do that more, you'll gain more of that wisdom, but you just won't find it by watching videos or by, trying to live vicariously through someone else's life. You just won't get that same kind of wisdom. You really got to go out and try it. Like you got to, I watch videos tutorials about things that I might never do, right? And you do glean some understanding, wisdom off of it, right? But there is nothing like just sitting there and trying it. And I will often only learn enough to not hurt myself when trying to do something and purposefully make mistakes. Purposefully make mistakes. That because you learn so much from doing these mistakes, which is again part of the Proverbs. I think even in here somewhere too, but and part of that, James or what have you, is rejoice in these mistakes, rejoice in these trials and errors and things like this because you learn from them, right? And make sure that you learn from them. So look for what to learn for when you're making these mistakes. Is like, man, this isn't quite working the way that I thought it would work. Whenever I'm making like, even other people's designs is like a little 3D printing thing, and these little gears don't really quite mesh, right? Um, I could have looked at that 3D file or looked at other people playing with it or something like that and never really seen like, oh wait, this doesn't really work how you would intend it to work. It's supposed to be a fidget thing, but it doesn't really move unless you kind of stick your finger in there and then it binds up on your finger and starts pinching and you can't really turn it any other way because it doesn't come out. It's just not a really great design. But with my past understanding and wisdom, I can understand how to make this into a more functional and better thing, because even the gears don't mesh up very well. They're very loose and they jiggle around, and there's all kinds of things that are wrong with it. But I would not have known that, definitely not intuitively known that, unless I actually had it in my hand, right? And then suddenly I can feel and I can see how this should be designed better, to have better tolerances and tighter, and be able to have a different design to where you can actually reach and touch the gears and things like this, and it would become a good little fidget toy keychain or something like that. But right now, as it sits, it's just kind of like a cute little trinket thing. I had some black and white ones that looked better. I think I gave them all to my love. Um, but yeah, this is why I will purposefully, I rarely even do like little test prints like this, because sometimes I'll just, again, purposefully do something quote unquote stupid or what have you, is to just make mistakes on purpose. Like I came up with a really just terrible design for these bookends, but I knew it was something that would work. And why I printed it so thick in certain spots, I don't know, but I just did. Um, but you have to just try it. Print something that's too thin, too thick, or design something that's too much this way or too much that way, knowing that you will get what is correct by actually doing it, right? Um, so I'd rather go through multiple trial and errors instead of trying to hurry up and spend all my time and figure out all the little kinks and all the little details before I actually go and produce the thing or try it out. I'll make little test things here and there. Like this is some some text here, and my mother had to point out that I didn't even spell first text right. It says frist or something like this. Um, no, whenever I like posted about this photo, I like, photoshopped it to where it actually says, first text or something. But this is just a way to test on how well my new printer can print text out. And this was with a smaller nozzle, and I've never used a small nozzle like that. So, and I could actually get readable text all the way down to this size, which was pretty incredible. And this was to really get my hands on it, to really see it. Like, okay, is that okay? It's readable, but is it practical? Does it take too long? Is it kind of mushing up some of the letters or something like this? Could I sacrifice a little bit of space to get it a little bigger and go for that? Do I really need this size of nozzle? Whatever it may be. And I even tried printing some text with a larger nozzle that I had and seeing what I could do with that. And some of these things just come with experience. I'm just pulling up things because I have them. So there's a little, dinosaur, or not dinosaurs, rhino. Looks like a dinosaur, huh? But you probably can't tell in the camera, but there's some bleeding of color where this thing was doing multicolor printing. And I can actually see a dark stripe that goes all the way through the gray, all the way around it, wherever it's doing the black here, because the black was staining the nozzle every time it would switch out colors, and it was staining the nozzle. So if I had adjusted, if I really wanted to make this like, let's say, a product, I would need to adjust the amount of purging that it does to clean out that color, or add some purge tower or something like this, which I actually removed, and that would have cleaned it up, but it would produce more waste. So it's like, which is more valuable to you? Do you want it absolutely perfect, or do you want it more efficient? There's always a trade-off, right? And this is also something that is part of wisdom, is understanding these comparisons, these trade-offs. This is what a proverb is. It means comparison. You're comparing two different things. That's what a parable is, right? And that's what wisdom is being able to understand. It's being able to come up with analogies. And this is something I find, even annoying my wife with, is this is how I talk. I just talk in parables. I just constantly use analogies, especially talking to someone whose English is not their first language, and I have to kind of try to simplify things. But because she thinks I'm not talking about the subject anymore because I'm bringing up other things, I'm like, no, I'm still talking about this. I'm just trying to give you a way to be able to understand this with something you already understand. Um, and if she gives it enough patience, she'll understand from it. And I might give, two or three analogies or something just to drive the point home, I guess, which is what we see even Jesus doing, right? Is he'll have multiple parables, and he's could be bringing this stuff up on the spot. It's really not that hard to do once you get to a certain point. And have this understanding and have this experience in multiple things, and you can see the relations between all these different things. Um, didn't really understand this as wisdom until recently, right? Somewhat recently, I should say, in or at least didn't quite put the wording to it, I guess. Um, so and then you could start doing things intuitively and do things like first shot. Like I made this little thing in vase mode, which shouldn't be printable in vase mode, but I learned how to do it in vase mode first shot because I just understood what would be required to make the file to make this print in one continuous line the whole time. So I don't. I didn't really even meant to print it this small, but I just kind of made it and just printed it out. I'm like, wait, I didn't even see how big that was, but it kind of made a nice little screwdriver holder thing. I got these absurdly long screwdrivers for dealing with like some of these toys and things that I get that have screws deeply embedded. Um, but other times, I'll do these test prints, like I'm doing little test prints to see how things fit together and what have you. But sometimes I'll just print it and go, okay, show me your faults. Show me what's wrong with it. Tell me where I need to adjust this or that. And then I'll see that adjustment and not even look for all the faults. And I'll sacrifice some plastic or whatever it may be or whatever, just so I can focus on one thing at a time. I'll actually end the stream here because my wife is calling. So I'll pick this up later tonight and we'll continue with a new type of study here. So thanks for watching.